Hey all, Brent Rusinow here. I wanted to make a video specifically outlining all of my effects on my pedal board and how I'm using them, because I get a lot of questions, everything ranging from just what's on the board to how they're set, what order they're in, what songs during Alan Stone's set I use them on. So I wanted to show you all what I'm currently using, and hopefully by explaining how I have them set, you'll see ways that you can take what I'm doing and maybe make it work for you. So let's dig in. All right, let's start talking about these pedals from right to left. So first one I have is the TC Electronic Polytune. Just a really good solid tuner. It's built well. It's reliable. It tracks well down to B string. It's bright enough for dark stages. It does have the feature to show you tuning for all your strings at once. I'd never use that. I just use it like a traditional tuner and check each string one at a time. So that's my main mute slash tuner that most people use. Next up is my Electro Harmonix Micropog. This thing I've been using for about a year and a half, and it's become a little bit of something that I've used pretty regularly during my solo sections. I started using an effect like this that was off of one of the I had a Boss full effects board, one of the, I think it was the GT10B, the old digital ones, and it had an effect like this that I got used to and I used a lot. But when I started building an analog board, I wanted something that was more compact and more specialized, and of all the ones that I tried, this one did what I wanted the best. So my settings on it are pretty straightforward. I never use the sub-octave on this pedal. I really just use it for the octave up feature. So I set my dry about 12 o'clock and my octave up a little bit more. So that way it keeps my dry level pretty consistent, but just brings that high octave in a little hotter than the dry. So yeah, the octaves at like 1 or 2 o'clock, something like that. But that's a really reliable thing that I'll kick on typically halfway through my solos with Alan. So it's just a great tracking octave pedal. All right, I'm gonna talk about my Aguilar pedals now. On top of these things just being so sturdy and built like tanks, and I've never had any problems with them, they're really musical pedals. And I think the best way to show them to you and kind of illustrate that is I'm going to show each pedal and break down the knobs by the knobs that I set and have left where they are and really contribute to kind of the sound that I'm going for. The knobs that will potentially vary depending on how hard you play and how loud you play. And then the master level, if there is one, which will basically vary depending on which amplifier you're using, where you're setting your gain stage at on the amplifier. That's going to vary from show to show, and I adjust that typically. That's the first thing that I start playing with as soon as I get all my amp and my everything plugged in and ready to go. So let's start with the Filter Twin. This thing is just a great, really versatile envelope filter. I'm running... So it does a down filter and an up filter, and you can blend them together. For that, I'm pretty much running everything close to 12 o'clock. So 12 o'clock for both the down and the up, and then the blend is about middle of the road, somewhere maybe a little bit behind 12 o'clock. But those knobs I don't change. I've set those and left those for a while. What you may need to change depending is the threshold knob. The threshold... Basically what that's doing is it's controlling the sensitivity of the pedal to when the envelope opens depending on how hard you're hitting the note or playing your bass. So depending on the output level of your bass, how hard you play, it might be opening too quickly. In that case, you'd want to turn the threshold down. If it's not opening enough, then you'd want to turn the threshold up. So I tend to keep it a little more kind of around 11 o'clock. My bass is... I run my bass active and I run it pretty hot, so that seems to take care of things even though I'm not the hardest player in the world. So that's how I use that thing. As far as like when I use it on songs, it's kind of a nice little easy way to kick into gear and take things up a notch without adding too much playing or getting too busy with what I'm doing. It works well um, when Alan's talking and I'm trying to have a little bit of fun. Sometimes I use it on solo sections as well. So great pedal. I really like that one. The Aguilar TLC Compressor. This thing I use a lot lately. So I've had a hard time with compression in the past. It doesn't sound great to me a lot of times, especially pedal form. This thing is really, really smooth and just helps me out a lot. I tend to use it in two different ways. I'm either using it on the harder, more aggressive songs in Alan's set. So those of you who know the material, it's stuff like What I've Seen, Mama. There's a new song Voodoo that I use it on for sure. Satisfaction, songs like that. I'm really benefiting a lot from this pedal. It lets me not dig in as hard, but still keep a really nice round, warm, big sound. I also use it on my solos during the show when I take them. Again, lets me kind of keep my playing soft, and keeps it nice and warm when I move up to the upper register, kind of halfway through the solo typically. So the way I have this set, the stuff that I leave, the attack, this is controlling basically how quickly the compression is kicking on from 10 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds. I've got it, I'm guessing around like 20. It kicks on pretty quickly. The slope is controlling basically the shape of the curve of how the compression works. The lower levels, it's going to be a less aggressive compression. Higher levels, it's going to be a little more aggressive. I've got it somewhere kind of like 11 o'clock. It's definitely working, but it's not so unbelievably strong. So those are the knobs that I set consistent. The one that I will again change depending on the day and what amp I'm using is the level. So basically, I'm trying to match this as closely as I can to my clean tone with the pedal off. So I'll just switch it back on and off and try to match that as close as I can. That will vary depending on the amplifier I'm using. And then the threshold, that you might need to change depending on your instrument and kind of where you like your compression. I keep mine right around 12 o'clock for me, maybe a little bit behind, like around 11. But again, like if you are feeling like the compression's too aggressive, you don't want it kicking on as strong, then by all means turn down the sensitivity. If you want it to kick on and you can't hear anything, or you want more of it, feel free to turn it up. So that's the TLC compressor. That thing I use all the time. All right, the Octamizer. This thing is awesome. It's just a super heavy but clear and very adjustable octave down effect. What I love about it is not only does it have level adjustments for both the octave and the clean tone, it's got really nice musical tone adjustments for each. So as far as the settings go, I like the octave can get really subby on this thing, so I tend to keep it a little less than the clean tone. Clean tone's at 12 o'clock. Octave level, I've got it more around 11, like 10, 11. That seems to work best for me. It definitely bumps things up a notch when I have the pedal on, but it doesn't overpower things. So going down to the tone knobs, clean tone, it's a very predictable clean tone adjustment. So similar to how one would work if you had a passive tone on your instrument. The more you go, the more treble you're going to have. I kind of like it a little warmer, like for this. So I keep it around 11, 12-ish, like right around there. And then this Octave Filter, this is basically a filter sweep of the octave itself, that low octave. So simplified, when it's all the way down, it sounds very, very low frequency, not a lot of highs getting through, very subby. And as you go higher, it becomes a little bit more of like a grindy, almost like saw wave-ish feeling thing, like a little more electronic feeling. I keep it just about 9 o'clock, which is just enough tone to make it so so the subbiness doesn't take over, but not so it's becoming too grindy. So that's how I use this thing. During the show, I also use this similarly to the Filter Twin, in that if I'm wanting to kick something up a notch but continue maybe a theme that I'm playing, I don't want to I don't want to start overplaying. I'll turn that on. It works really well underneath Alan's talking sections of the show, and yeah, that way I don't take away from what he's doing, but I can help add energy if he's taking it in a place where it needs that. So, great pedal. And then last is one of my favorite distortion grit bass pedals I've ever used, and I don't use them that often, but this thing convinced me that I wanted one on my board, is the Aguilar Agro. This thing is phenomenal, and I use this thing on a surprisingly... I'm using it on more and more songs during the show and more spots during the show, just because it is as musical as it is and doesn't, it doesn't cut my bass out. That's the big thing with distortion pedals for bass is, does it do too much damage to taking out? Does it take out too much of my bottom end? So this thing does a really good job with that. Starting with the knobs that I kind of leave and keep them there. First off, saturation. Saturation is going to be pretty predictably how much grit you're going to have. So I keep it around 1 o'clock. It's pretty gritty, but it works for me for whatever reason. Like, I would not have expected this to work as well as it does, but it just kind of makes sense for what I'm doing. So I set the saturation around 1 o'clock. With that in mind, presence is going to come into play, because as you get more grit, the presence is going to help the actual note, like the note tone, come through enough that you can hear what you're doing, and it doesn't just become a muddy, grindy mess. So I keep my presence right around 10 o'clock, I'd say. That helps kind of compensate for that. And also, as you turn this knob up, it does lose some of that low end, which is where the contour comes in. This thing just seems to be kind of like almost like a bass compensation knob in actuality. Like, it, for me, it's like if I'm not hearing enough bass, I basically turn this up and then it fixes it. So contour I've got at about 2 o'clock, and that works well. And then, so those are all ones that I really leave. And then the level knob, this is going to change show to show based on the amplifier. Basically, I set the level to the point where this thing is just a marginal increase in intensity from my clean tone. So I'll just switch on and off until I get this level set correctly, and I feel like I've got what I'm going for. But that's the whole breakdown of what my pedals do. I'm going to be making another video that will be, I'll link to from this video, showing these things in action and kind of the different combinations that I'll use them. I definitely, these pedals play really nicely together, so there's some really cool effects you can get out of combining them. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot.